Chapter 3. The morning sun shined through the 2x2 opening to the jailhouse window, warming my face. I stretched with both arms and then rolled over in the cot. I wanted to enjoy the comfort of a place to lay my head, even if it was a jailhouse. I knew, too, that shortly I'd be enjoying some biscuits and jam, as all of the surly sort did in the jailhouse in the morning. Even with this luxury, I still couldn't help but feel for Miss Devine. I knew that I was innocent, but my history with Paxton had caused a situation that now made her go against everything she believed in. This was doubly painful considering that my mom and pa based their whole life on principle, taught me to fight for what was right instead of what was wrong. In a strange way, made me love her even more. This was something only a mama could do for her boy. I was going to make a pact that from now on I was going to be a good boy. I was going to work to be a son that would make Miss Devine proud. I could hear the jailhouse front door open. Oh, I thought my breakfast has arrived. I could hear someone walking toward the back room. The sheriff appeared in the doorway. I rolled over, sitting up, practically rubbing my hands together in anticipation of these hot biscuits and jam. I immediately noticed on the sheriff's face, on his left cheek, a very large cut and bruise. I was feeling a bit angry about the deal that the sheriff forced on Miss Devine. "What happened, Sheriff? Did you cut yourself shaving?" I let out a slight laugh after I said it. "Nope, it's an injury from taming a wild horse." As soon as I heard what he said, it didn't set right with me because I knew nobody tamed wild horses at night. I must have had a perplexed look on my face. "Chance, it seems that filly, Miss Devine, just needed to be broken a bit to see fit with our deal." "What do you mean, Sheriff? What have you done to her?" I jumped off my cot, forcing myself against the iron jailhouse door. "What the hell does that mean, Sheriff?" "Oh, hey, boy, you watch that language. Besides, it wasn't me completely. Mr. West took a big part in it as well." "Mr. West? What does that have to do with this?" "Chance, ultimately the payment for your release will always go through Mr. West. I just included myself because I always wanted to put that notch on my bedpost. It seems that Miss Devine didn't take too kindly, though, to getting saddled by two riders. Let me tell you, that bucking filly was well worth the war wound on my face. It also scored some big points with Mr. West, so you can see it's a win-win for everybody." "You son of a bitch!" The sheriff reached through the bars, grabbing my shirt. "Now you listen to me, gutter snap. I can still have you hung for yesterday's incident." He looked in my eyes and shoved me back away from the cell door. The sheriff turned and started walking out. "I was going to bring you some hot biscuits and jam, but seeing that you're a bit unruly this morning, I think I'll sit reminiscing about the pleasures of Miss Devine while I enjoy eating your breakfast." I just stood in the middle of the cell, stunned with 1,000 thoughts running through my head. I could feel the rage starting to swell inside of me. Just then I heard the jail door open. "Well, good morning, Miss Devine, and what a fine morning it is." Miss Devine didn't answer. "What's the matter, Miss Devine? The cat got your tongue?" "I just came to get my boy, Sheriff." Something sounded strange about Miss Devine's voice. "Why, sure, Miss Devine, we did have a deal, didn't we? Would you like some biscuits and jam before I let the vermin free? I wouldn't take a glass of water from you in the middle of the high desert and on my deathbed. Now, if I can have my boy, Sheriff." "As you wish, Miss Devine. I am a man of my word." The sheriff had no idea what it meant to be a man of his word. I could hear the cell door keys jingling as the sheriff and Miss Devine walked back toward me. As soon as they broke the doorway, my heart sank. "Oh, Miss Devine." Her face was so beat up. It looked like her nose was broken and she was missing a couple of teeth. She was beat up real bad. Immediately, tears started flowing down my face. I glared at the sheriff with the most hate in my eyes I had ever had for anyone. The sheriff opened the cell door and motioned for me to exit. Miss Devine reached out and grabbed my hand, pulling me forward. I still had tears flowing down my face. Miss Devine put up her chin with the only self-respect she had and walked out of the jailhouse door. As we walked away, I was searching for something to say to make her feel better, and me less hollow for what I'd gotten us into, but the only thing that could come out of my mouth was, "Someday I'm gonna kill that man." Miss Devine whipped around. "Chance, I don't want to hear that kind of talk. That is exactly what got your daddy killed." "Miss Devine, my daddy taught me to stand up for what was right. I know you don't know this, Chance, but your daddy is the reason that I stopped entertaining at the club. He showed me that I deserved to be treated with respect." "You knew my daddy?" I must have asked the question in a way that Miss Devine knew where I was headed. "No, Chance. Your daddy was not one of my customers, not ever. He was just a very kind man that was always trying to help folk. He could say it in a way that you just believe that you deserve better. Your pa was a great man, so I don't want to hear any more talk about killing folk. Do you understand me?" I looked away in a small defiance. Miss Devine put her hand on my chin and looked deep into my eyes, waiting for a response. More tears streamed down my face. On the inside, I was killing that man right now. "Yes, Miss Devine, I understand. I'll try to be a good boy for you." Miss Devine did her best smile, but her face was so bruised that she winced in pain when she did. "Let's go back and I'll see if I can wrestle up some victuals. You must be hungry, Chance." I felt so sick to my stomach, I didn't feel much like eating, but I agreed anyway just to make her happy. As we walked back to the stairwell where I laid my head, I could see Paxton leaning against the wall of the post office. "How was that vanilla chocolate square, Chance?" "By the looks of Miss Devine, I must say it must have been well worth it." I didn't say a word, I just kept walking. "Oh, all out of tongue, are we? And teeth for that matter, I see." I leaned in Miss Devine's direction and whispered, "I'd put a bullet in that boy's heart if only he had one." Miss Devine smiled and then winced in pain as we walked away from that critter. "Chance, his day will come. You can't go around treating folk like that and expect to get away with it." "Oh, I know, Miss Devine, but it sure will be hard waiting knowing someone deserves it as much as he does." Miss Devine just smiled and patted me on the head. After we arrived at the saloon, Miss Devine excused herself to freshen up. I looked under the stairs and my horse blanket was gone, the only possession that I had. I knew it was that desert dingo Paxton. I immediately turned to head for town. As I broke the side of the saloon wall into the street, I could hear a commotion happening in front of the saloon doors. I squinted my eyes to get a good look at what was happening. It was clearly one of Mr. West's men, and a tall, dark fella by the name of William the Widowmaker Reno. Everybody knew the Widowmaker was one of the fastest, most feared gunfighters around. Killed over 30 men, and that's just the ones that were talked about. The two men were jawing back and forth, and I could see that they were starting to circle each other. There was going to be a gunfight, and I knew that the Widowmaker was going to add another notch on the gun handle. I moved back to the corner of the building so that I was out of the line of fire. The two men started walking backwards until they were about 20 feet apart. I could see that both men had pulled their coats back, exposing their Colt 45. The Widowmaker's was shiny as could be, and the handle was facing backward in the holster, the sign of a true gunfighter. There was a definite squint in both men's eyes, as they looked for even the slightest twitch to indicate it was time. I could sense that the Reaper himself was about to show to pick up another victim. Both men reached for their pistols, but I could swear I heard a gunshot before either fired their weapon. It took a second, I couldn't believe it, but William the Widowmaker Reno fell straight forward, dropping his beautiful pistol on the ground in front of him. Mr. Westman even looked surprised. I looked back and forth between William Reno and Mr. West, scoundrel, and he was still holding his pistol straight out in front of him. I stood there stunned that a common man had taken down a legend. Only thing was, I noticed that there was no smoke, nothing coming out of the hot barrel of the Victor. Surely there'd be evidence that he fired his weapon. Mr. West's henchman turned and began to walk back to the saloon. It was commonplace for the town folk to stay inside just in case there was any more shooting. I looked around and could see no one. I crept over by William Reno, bending down by his pistol on the ground in front of him. When I was sure that no one was looking, I picked it up and ran back under the stairwell. There was a board that was missing some nails on the side of the saloon, so I pulled it open and shoved the pistol under the building out of sight. I then went back to the corner of the building. I noticed that folk were starting to come out to see what had happened. A whole lot of them were going on and on about they couldn't believe the Widowmaker had been done in by a nobody. I could see in the distance that the lawman was headed to make heads or tails of what just happened. "All right, everybody. There's nothing to see here. All you folks need to head back inside." Well, if you could imagine, the sheriff was talking upon deaf ears. It was common for the town folk to strip the deceased of any valuables. Boots, clothes, guns. I mean, what a treasure to have something from the most feared gunfighter to this day. I felt proud in a weird way that I had witnessed the last stand of the Widowmaker, and that I had a keepsake being his pistol. All the town had dispersed the scene after ravaging the carcass, and it was now just the sheriff standing there. The sheriff was walking around William talking to himself. I crept out from behind the wall and the sheriff looked over in my direction. "You been there the whole time, Guttersnipe?" I hesitated with my answer. "Yes, sir." I answered so quiet that the sheriff barked out, "Speak up, boy." I again said, "Yes, sir." "Well, then out with it. What'd you see?" I was nervous because I didn't want to get involved in this whole thing. Plus, I knew that I had taken the pistol and hidden it in the wall. "Well, just like you think, Sheriff. There was a gunfight and now someone's dead." The sheriff walked around William again, examining the ground. "Well, how about this man's pistol? Any knowledge of its whereabouts?" I instantly became nervous and tried to change the subject. "You know, Sheriff, there was something that I noticed." "What's that, Guttersnipe?" "When the men drew their guns, I could swear I heard a shot before either man fired a shot. In fact, when I looked at that man that shot down the Widowmaker, his gun wasn't even hot or smoking. In fact, I don't even think he fired his pistol at all." The sheriff paused in deep thought. Then what are you trying to say?" "I think that man was shot by someone waiting for this to happen, lurking around the corner. That's the only way I could see fit that someone could get the better of the Widowmaker." The sheriff looked down at William Reno. He began to look for entrance wounds, but could find nothing. The sheriff knelt down next to William. "Come over here, Guttersnipe. Help me roll this bag of bones over." I backed up because I wasn't keen on touching a dead man. The sheriff got more direct with his order. "Come over here, boy." I walked over and knelt down next to the sheriff. I reluctantly put my hands on this man's side and pushed. As we lifted the body, the sheriff immediately agreed. "This man has been shot in the back, and you saw the whole thing, Guttersnipe." I had a moment of pride knowing I was right. "Yes, sir. I saw the whole thing." "Did you see who could have shot this man in the back?" "No, sir. I didn't see that." "Well, why don't you run along? I can take it from here," the sheriff instructed. I walked away thinking about the fact that the sheriff confirmed that this man had been shot in the back. As I started walking to town, I could see Paxton walking towards me. He'd never miss a chance to say something evil, and this time was no different. "I guess that murdering some bitch got what was coming to him." "Whatever you talking about, Paxton?" "Oh, just that a murdering vandal like that gets shot in the back like the mangy dog that he was. Every day has its dog, and today he's a dead dog." I could feel the evil radiating off of Paxton. I almost didn't know what to say. I became almost whispering silent with my voice. "And how would you know that man had been shot in the back, Paxton?" "Really, Guttersnipe, nothing happens in this town without my family say so. You of all people should know that." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I instantly became nervous because I knew that I had just explained to the sheriff that I had seen the whole thing. I just turned and walked away from Paxton, walking as fast as I could to the saloon. I could hear Paxton in the background. "You run, little dog. Your day is coming as well." I paid no mind because I had to talk to Miss Devine. I ran straight up the stairs and into the brothel. I pushed open the door and there was Miss Sunshine and a gentleman caller sweating and a grunting like a couple of pigs. Miss Sunshine jumped up covering herself. "Chance, don't you know how to knock?" I turned away as if to stop looking, but it was a sight to see, so I peeked out of the corner of my eye. I'm looking for Miss Devine. Have you seen her?" "Why, Chance, I believe she's over at the bathhouse freshening up." I didn't even respond. I just turned and ran down the stairs towards the bathhouse. I snuck up beside the window that had always been our bath time meeting place. I began peeking in, and I could see Miss Devine in the tub. I made a psst sound trying to get her attention. After the third try, she looked my way. "Oh, Chance, I'm just finishing up. Climb through the window, honey, so I can get you scrubbed up before the water goes cold." "Miss Devine," I whispered, "I have no time for a bath. I need to talk to you. I think I'm in real trouble." Miss Devine perked up in the tub, not realizing I could see her soapy, full-breasted upper body. She blushed a bit and politely asked if I could turn away for a second. I could hear the water sloshing about in the tub. Finally, she whispered, "You can turn around now. Now, what's this all about, Chance?" "I think I'm in real hot water, Miss Devine. I saw the Widowmaker himself get gunned down." "Oh, come now, Chance, you're joshing about." "No, ma'am, I'm not. No one can beat the Widowmaker to the draw. We both know that. Unless you shoot him in the back." Miss Devine paused. "You're not making any sense, son. That would be unfair to shoot a man before he turned around in a fair gunfight." "I know, ma'am, but this was a fair fight. But he wasn't shot until they drew on each other. The gunshot rang out before either of their pistols fired. I'm saying that someone else knew this was about to happen and shot William Reno on the back." "Still, why would you be in danger?" "'Cause I witnessed the whole thing and I told the sheriff as such." Miss Devine motioned with her hand for me to keep talking. "I didn't think much of it until I ran across Paxton, and he nearly confessed to knowing that William Reno was shot in the back. He told me nothing happens around here without his family's blessings." "Oh, Chance, this is not good. We're going to have to hide you until I can get us out of town. Let me get dressed and I'll head back to gather my things, and then we'll be on our way. I want you to lay low until I come find you. I'll meet you by the big oak tree over by the Bailey's farm." I took off running for the old oak tree. I knew also that I had to get out of town or face some dire consequences. Once I arrived at the tree, I could hear some voices over by the creek. I crept up the small hill in the tall grass and looked at who it was fooling about. It was Adabelle and Flint skipping stones on the water. I knew I shouldn't be seen, but I couldn't leave without talking to Adabelle one more time. I walked out of the grass covering and made my presence known. Adabelle looked a bit shocked, but she was still very pleasant. "Why, good morning, Mr. Walker." "Good morning, Adabelle. Might I talk to you alone for a spell?" Adabelle paused for a second and then asked Flint to run along to play in the barn. "What's on your mind, Chance?" I swallowed hard. My daddy always told me that life was full of opportunities and that every stone unturned was an opportunity lost. I have to go away and I can't get into the what first. I just need to tell you that I fancy you a mite bit. In fact, I think I love you." "Mr. Walker, are you getting fresh?" "Adabelle, no. I just wanted you to know how I felt about you. My heart feels like a bunch of wild Indians are dancing about every time I think about you." Adabelle just stood there looking at me for what seemed like the longest time. I was starting to feel like such a fool for baring my soul. Just then, Adabelle made it all worth it. Adabelle leaned over and placed her hands on either side of my face. "Chance Walker, you're the sweetest boy I have ever met." She then leaned over and gave me the longest, slowest kiss on my right cheek. I think I may have even blacked out in the middle of it. I don't remember a thing after her lips touched my skin. After she pulled away from my face, I couldn't help but to scrunch up in the goofiest smile that anyone ever did see. Adabelle smiled right back. "Chance, where you gonna go?" "Adabelle, I can't tell you. It would just be too dangerous for you to know where I am. Are you okay, Chance? All I could think of was that soft and subtle kiss on my cheek. No need to worry about me. I'll be just fine, Miss Annabelle, just fine. Came from behind me. It was Annabelle's paw, Mr. Bailey. Am I to believe my eyes? I don't need some common thief around my daughter. Annabelle, you get back to the house. You best be leaving, boy, or I'll send for the law. Sir, I didn't do what they accuse me of. That's not for me to decide. Besides, that fine boy Paxton West says he saw you do the whole thing. Well, that fine young man isn't such a fine young man in my opinion, sir. Are you getting cross with me? It doesn't surprise me, though, knowing you're a ma and pa. I wanted to say something more, but I knew it would only worsen things for Annabelle and me. I walked out of sight waiting for Miss Devine.